He was the Prince of New York, a man whose name you whispered in fear. Lorenzo Vitiello. They said he had ice in his veins and blood on his hands. She was just a waitress at a high-end spot in Manhattan, trying to disappear from a past that wanted her dead. Two different worlds that should never have touched. But one night, amidst the clinking of wine glasses and the murmur of fear, a single sentence spoken in a forgotten Sicilian dialect changed everything. When the most dangerous man in the city hears the waitress speak to his dying mother in the language of home, the contract is signed, not for a hit, but for a heart. This is the story of how a few words started a war. The rain in New York City didn't wash away the grime. It just made the neon lights of Little Italy reflect harder off the black asphalt. Inside Ristorante D'Angelo, the air was thick with the smell of garlic, expensive truffle oil, and palpable anxiety. Isabella Bellarici adjusted her apron, her knuckles white as she gripped the tray. It was a Friday night, and the usual Wall Street crowd was loud, but they weren't the reason the manager, Mr. Moretti, was sweating through his suit. The Vitiello family had just reserved the private alcove. In the underworld of the East Coast, the Vitiellos were royalty. They didn't just run the unions and the docks. They owned the silence of the city. At the head of the table sat Lorenzo Vitiello. At 32, he was the Capo de Capi of the new generation. He didn't look like the mobsters of old movies with cigars and wide suits. Lorenzo was sharp, terrifyingly elegant. He wore a bespoke charcoal Tom Ford suit that cost more than Bella made in a year. His eyes were dark, devoid of light, scanning the room like a predator assessing a jungle. To his right sat his brother, Marco, a loose cannon with a jagged scar running down his jaw. But it was the woman to his left who commanded the most attention, even though she looked the frailest. Donna Paola Vitiello, the matriarch. She sat in a wheelchair, a blanket draped over her legs. Her face was a map of wrinkles, her eyes clouded with cataracts and the early stages of dementia. She looked agitated, her hands trembling as she picked at the linen tablecloth. "Isabella," Mr. Moretti hissed, grabbing Bella's arm in the kitchen. "You take the table." "Paolo is shaking so much he's going to drop the wine." Bella froze. "Me? Mr. Moretti, I just started 3 weeks ago. I don't know the VIP protocol." "You have steady hands. That's all that matters. Just pour the wine, serve the osso buco, and do not make eye contact with Lorenzo. If the old lady complains, you apologize and you come get. Hey, do you understand?" Bella swallowed the lump in her throat. She needed this job. She needed the cash tips that didn't leave a paper trail. She had been running for 2 years, ever since her father's gambling debts in Chicago turned into a death sentence for her family. She was supposed to be invisible. Serving the head of the New York Mafia was the opposite of invisible. "I'll do it," she whispered. She walked out onto the floor, balancing the heavy tray of appetizers. The restaurant had gone quiet. Even the hedge fund managers knew better than to be loud when the Vitiellos were eating. As she approached the table, the air grew colder. 2 bodyguards, massive men with bulges under their jackets, watched her every step. Lorenzo didn't look up. He was cutting a piece of bread with surgical precision, ignoring his brother Marco, who was whispering something aggressive in his ear. "Antipasto," Bella said softly, her voice steady despite her racing heart. She placed the platter down. Lorenzo stopped cutting. He didn't look at her face. He looked at her hands. No rings. Cheap watch. Scars on her knuckles from cleaning chemicals. "Water," the old woman, Donna Paola, croaked. She pushed her plate away, her face twisting in distress. This is cold. It smells like nothing." "Ma, it's the best spot in the city," Marco snapped, impatient. "Just eat." "It smells like dirt." Donna Paola raised her voice, her hand shaking as she knocked a fork off the table. It clattered loudly against the floor. The entire restaurant flinched. Lorenzo slowly turned his head to his mother. His expression softened, the ice melting just enough to show exhaustion. "Mama, please. You need to eat." "I want home," she whimpered, tears forming in her milky eyes. I want the sugo. The real sugo." "We can't go home, Mama," Lorenzo said, his voice low, dangerous to anyone else but gentle to her. "We are here." Bella retrieved the fork. She should have walked away. She should have gone back to the kitchen and let Mr. Moretti handle the meltdown. But she looked at the old woman's face, and she didn't see a mob boss's mother. She saw her own Nana, who had died in a hospice facility in Chicago, confused and asking for food that didn't taste like cardboard. Bella felt a pull in her chest, a dangerous impulse. She knew what the woman was asking for. It wasn't on the menu. The tension at the table was suffocating. Marco looked ready to flip the table. Lorenzo looked like a man who could conquer a city, but was helpless against his mother's fading mind. Donna Paola began to ramble, her English failing her. She switched to Italian, but not the standard Italian taught in schools. She slipped into a thick, rocky, ancient dialect from the deep south of Sicily, a specific variation from the hill towns near Corleone. Cista e munizza, she muttered, weeping. Vogiusuli, vogiulo duri di la zagara. This is garbage. I want the sun. I want the smell of orange blossoms. Marco rolled his eyes. Great, now she's speaking gibberish. Lorenzo, get the nurse. Shut up, Marco, Lorenzo said, his voice like a whip crack. He leaned in. Mama, speak English. I don't understand the old words like Papa did. Lorenzo had been raised in America. He spoke Italian, sure, but the dialect of his grandmother, the specific rustic slang of the old country, that was lost to the assimilation of money and power. Donna Paola looked lonely, devastatingly lonely in a room full of people who feared her son. Bella couldn't stop herself. The words bubbled up from her childhood, from the summer she spent hiding in her grandmother's kitchen while her father made bad deals in the living room. She stepped closer to the wheelchair, ignoring the sudden shift in the bodyguard's stance. Signora, Bella said softly. Donna Paola stopped crying. She looked up, trying to focus on the blur of the waitress's uniform. Bella leaned down, risking everything, and spoke. Not in English. Not in standard Italian. She spoke in the exact, heavy dialect of the Sicilian hills. Non è la zagra, signora, ma l'aria qui è pesante, Bella whispered, her accent flawless, rough around the edges just like the old woman's. Se permette, posso dire allo chef di mettere un po' di basilico fresco e olio buono. Come faceva la nonna? Semplice. It's not orange blossoms, ma'am, but the air here is heavy. If you allow me, I can tell the chef to use fresh basil and good oil, like grandmother used to make. Simple. Silence. Absolute, deafening silence. Marco's mouth hung slightly open. The bodyguards tensed, unsure if this was a threat. But Lorenzo went still. He slowly turned his head, looking at Bella for the first time. Really looking at her. He looked at her dark curls, her tired eyes, and the way she held herself with a deferential but proud posture. Donna Paola's face transformed. The confusion vanished, replaced by a look of pure, lucid wonder. She reached out with a trembling hand and touched Bella's cheek. Tusi? DDADDOCU? The old woman asked. You are from there? Mio padre era di Prizzi. Bella lied smoothly. Prizzi was the neighboring town to Corleone, close enough to share the dialect, far enough to obscure her identity. Ho imparato sulle ginocchia di mia nonna. My father was from Prizzi. I learned on my grandmother's knees. Donna Paola let out a breath that sounded like a sob of relief. She turned to her son, gripping his hand with surprising strength. Enzo, she said, using his childhood name. Enzo, did you hear? She speaks the tongue. She sounds like home. Lorenzo stared at Bella. His eyes were intense, stripping away her defenses layer by layer. He wasn't looking at a waitress anymore. He was looking at a unicorn, a rare thing that he needed to possess. What is your name? Lorenzo asked. His voice was a deep baritone that vibrated in Bella's chest. Isabella, sir. Isabella. He tested the name, rolling the vowels. My mother hasn't eaten a full meal in 3 weeks because nothing tastes right. She says the food in this city has no soul. It's just overcomplicated, sir, Bella said, lowering her gaze. Old folks, they want the ingredients to speak, not the sauce. Lorenzo gestured to the empty chair next to his mother. Sit. Sir, I can't. My manager. I will buy this building and fire him if he looks in your direction. Lorenzo said calmly, not breaking eye contact. Sit. Talk to her. Keep her happy. Bella sat. For the next hour, she didn't serve tables. She held the hand of the mother of the most dangerous man in New York, speaking about olive harvests, the heat of the Sicilian sun, and the saints they prayed to for protection. She didn't know it yet, but as she spoke, Lorenzo wasn't listening to the stories. He was watching the way the light caught her eyelashes. He was watching his mother smile, for the first time in months. And he was making a decision. As the dinner wound down, Lorenzo signaled for the check, or rather, the lack of one, as D'Angelo's would never charge him. He stood up, buttoning his jacket. The room seemed to shrink around him. He walked around the table and stopped behind Bella's chair. He leaned down, his mouth inches from her ear. She could smell him, expensive leather, gunpowder, and Davidoff cologne. You have a shift tomorrow? He asked. Yes, sir. Dinner service. Not anymore, he whispered. You're done here, Bella panic flared. Please, I need this job. If I offended you. You didn't offend me, Isabella, Lorenzo said, and for a split second, his hand brushed her shoulder. The heat of his touch seared through her uniform. You just saved my mother's night. And in my world, debts are paid. He dropped a business card onto the table. It was heavy, black cardstock with nothing but a phone number embossed in gold. Be outside your apartment at 8 a.m. tomorrow. A car will collect you. My apartment? How do you know where I live? Bella asked, fear spiking. Lorenzo finally smiled. It was a terrifying, beautiful smile. I'm a Vitiello, Cara. I know everything. He turned to his men. Andiamo. As they swept out of the restaurant, leaving a vacuum of silence in their wake, Bella looked down at the card. Her hands were shaking. She had just been summoned by the devil himself. But as she looked at the empty wheelchair, where the old woman had sat, she remembered the grip of Donna Paola's hand. You just stole my heart, the old woman had whispered in Italian before leaving. Bella feared it wasn't the mother's heart she needed to worry about. It was the son's. And he didn't just steal hearts, he conquered them. The sun had barely risen over the skyline of Manhattan, casting long gray shadows across the cracked pavement of Bella's street. At 7:55 a.m., she stood on the curb, a single battered suitcase by her side. She wore her best dress, a modest navy blue wrap dress that she usually saved for church, but she felt exposed, like a deer waiting in a clearing for a hunter. Exactly at 8 a.m., a black Cadillac Escalade turned the corner. It didn't speed. It glided, heavy and armored, displacing the air around it. It pulled up to the curb, and the tinted back window rolled down an inch. The driver wasn't Lorenzo. It was one of the giants from the restaurant. He got out, wordlessly took her suitcase, and threw it into the trunk with effortless strength. He held the back door open. Get in, Miss Ricci. Bella hesitated. This was the moment of no return. In Chicago, when you got into a car like this with men like this, you didn't usually come back. But she thought of the eviction notice sitting on her kitchen counter. She thought of the constant looking over her shoulder. And she thought of Lorenzo's eyes, dark, intelligent, and oddly desperate when looking at his mother. She climbed in. The interior smelled of new leather and mint. To her surprise, Lorenzo was there. He was sitting on the other side of the back seat, reading a Financial Times on a tablet. He didn't look up as the door thudded shut, sealing them in a quiet, air-conditioned capsule. Good morning, Bella said, her voice small. Coffee, Lorenzo said, pointing to a silver thermos in the center console. Help yourself. Where are we going? He finally looked at her. He wasn't wearing a suit jacket today, just a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing a tattoo of a geometric compass on his forearm. It made him look less like a king and more like a man who worked with his hands, which was somehow more terrifying. My estate is in Sands Point, he said. The North Shore of Long Island. The city is too loud for Mama now. Sir, about the job. I don't even know what the job is. Am I a nurse? A chef? You are a companion. Lorenzo closed his tablet. My mother has the best doctors in the world. She has 3 chefs. She has maids to clean her room. But she has no one who understands her heart. She is trapped in her mind, drifting back to a time before the money, before the blood. She wants Sicily. You are going to give her Sicily. The car merged onto the highway, picking up speed. And the pay? Bella asked, trying to sound tougher than she felt. $10,000 a week. Cash. Plus room and board. Bella choked on the air. 10,000? Is it not enough? Lorenzo raised an eyebrow, his expression unreadable. I can double it. No, it's too much. Why would you pay a waitress that kind of money? Lorenzo turned his body fully toward her. The space between them crackled with tension. Because you are the only drug that works on her pain. And because I am buying your silence. And your life. Bella froze. My life? You live at the estate. You do not leave the grounds without my permission. You do not have guests. You do not make personal phone calls that aren't monitored. You disappear from the world, Isabella. You belong to the Vitiello family now. Bella's heart hammered against her ribs. It was a golden cage. Perfect for hiding from the Chicago syndicate that wanted to break her legs, but dangerous because she was locking herself in with a different kind of monster. I accept, she whispered. Lorenzo studied her face, his gaze lingering on the pulse fluttering in her neck. You accepted too quickly. A normal woman would ask about days off. About freedom. I'm not a normal woman, Bella said, a flash of defiance in her eyes. And I have nothing out here to miss. Good. Lorenzo leaned back, looking satisfied. Because I ran a background check on you last night, Isabella Ricci. The blood drained from Bella's face. The fake ID. The forged social security number she bought in a back alley in Detroit. It was good, but it wouldn't stand up to a Mafia-level audit. And? She squeaked. And it's very clean, Lorenzo lied. He watched her closely. Suspiciously clean. No high school yearbook photos online. No social media footprint before 2 years ago. It's almost as if Isabella Ricci was born in 2023. Bella gripped her knees. I value my privacy. Keep your secrets, Lorenzo said softly, turning his attention back to the window as the skyline of New York faded behind them. As long as they don't threaten my family, I don't care who you were. I only care who you are to my mother. But be warned, Kara. If you bring trouble to my door, I won't just fire you. I will bury you. The threat hung in the air for the rest of the hour-long drive. They arrived at the Vitiello estate, a sprawling limestone mansion that looked more like a European fortress than a home. Iron gates swung open, revealing manicured gardens, fountains, and armed guards patrolling the perimeter with Dobermans. As Bella stepped out of the car, she looked up at the towering facade. She had traded poverty for a prison made of marble. Welcome home, Lorenzo said, standing beside her. For a moment, he didn't look like the ruthless boss. He looked like a man bringing a prize home. Mama is in the garden. Go to her. 2 weeks had passed since Bella entered the Vitiello stronghold. Life inside the mansion was a surreal dream. Bella was given a suite in the East Wing that was larger than her entire apartment in Queens. She wore silk instead of polyester. She ate meals prepared by Michelin-star chefs. But the most surprising thing was Donna Paola. The old woman had blossomed. With Bella by her side, translating the world into the comforting dialect of the old country, Donna Paola was eating again. She was laughing. They spent hours in the rose garden, Bella reading aloud from Italian poetry books, or simply listening to the old woman's rambling stories about her late husband, the feared Don Antonio. Bella was safe, or so she thought. The danger wasn't coming from outside the walls, it was inside. It was late on a Tuesday evening. A storm was battering the coast, thunder rattling the heavy window panes of the library. Bella had just put Donna Paola to bed, and was heading to the kitchen to make herself tea. She passed the open door of the main study. Lorenzo was inside, sitting behind a massive mahogany desk, a glass of whiskey in his hand. He was staring at a wall of monitors, security feeds from around the property. You're up late, his voice drifted out, stopping her in the hallway. Bella stepped into the doorway. Just getting tea, sir. Your mother had a good day. She remembered your father's name today. Lorenzo swirled the amber liquid in his glass. I know. I watched the recording of you two in the solarium. You have a gift, Isabella. She just needs patience. Come in, Lorenzo commanded gently. Drink with me. It wasn't a request. Bella walked in, conscious of the fact that she was wearing a silk robe over her nightgown. She tightened the sash. Lorenzo poured a second glass of whiskey and slid it across the desk. To patience, he toasted. To patience, she echoed, taking a sip. The liquid burned pleasantly. My brother Marco doesn't trust you, Lorenzo said suddenly. The shift in conversation was jarring. Bella stiffened. Marco doesn't trust anyone. True. But he has been digging. He tells me that he called the town hall in Prizzi. He says there is no record of a Ricci family living there in the last 50 years. Bella's glass clinked loudly as she set it down on the coaster. Record-keeping in Sicily is chaotic. You know that. Lorenzo stood up and walked around the desk. He moved with the grace of a panther. He stopped right in front of her, leaning against the edge of the desk, crossing his legs. He was so close she could see the flecks of gold in his dark irises. Stop lying to me, Isabella. His voice was a low rumble. I told you I don't care about the name. But Marco cares. And if Marco finds out you are a fraud, he will think you are a plant. A spy for the Russians. Or the Irish. He will hurt you. I'm not a spy, Bella said, her voice trembling. I swear on my life, Lorenzo. I'm just... Just what? Lorenzo reached out and tucked a stray curl behind her ear. His fingers lingered on her jawline. The touch sent a shockwave through her body that had nothing to do with fear. Just a woman running from a debt? A bad ex-boyfriend? Something like that, she whispered. I can protect you from the world, Lorenzo murmured, his thumb tracing her bottom lip. But you have to give me the truth. I can't fight a war in the dark. The atmosphere shifted. The air became heavy, charged with a magnetic pull. Lorenzo looked at her not as an employee, but as a woman he wanted to devour. He leaned in closer. Bella didn't pull away. She was mesmerized by the intensity of his focus. For a moment, she forgot he was a killer. She only saw the man who loved his mother. Their lips were inches apart. Bella's breath hitched. Bam! The library door flew open. Bella jumped back, her heart nearly exploding. Lorenzo didn't flinch, but his eyes snapped to the door, instantly cold and deadly. Marco stood there, dripping wet from the rain, holding a manila envelope. He looked manic, his eyes wide with a mix of triumph and rage. I knew it! Marco shouted, storming into the room. I knew she was a rat. Marco, Lorenzo warned, his voice dropping an octave. Get out! No! Look at this, Lorenzo. Marco threw the envelope onto the desk. Photos spilled out. Bella looked down and felt her world collapse. They were mugshots. Not of her, but of her father. And beside them, a surveillance photo of Bella, younger, with blonde hair, walking out of a courthouse in Chicago. Her name isn't Isabella Ricci. Marco spat, pointing a shaking finger at her. Her name is Beatrice Gallo, daughter of Sloppy Joe Gallo, a gambling addict who owes $500,000 to the Chicago outfit. And guess what? The Chicago outfit put a hit on the whole family 2 years ago. Marco pulled a gun from his waistband. She's a liability, Lorenzo. If the outfit knows she's here, they'll come for us. She drew a target on our backs. Bella backed away, her hands up. Please, I didn't know where else to go. Lorenzo picked up one of the photos. He looked at it calmly, then looked at Bella. His expression was unreadable, masked by that terrifying mobster. Stoicism. Is this true? Lorenzo asked quietly. Yes, Bella sobbed. My father is dead. They killed him. I ran. I just wanted to disappear. I didn't know who you were when I took the job at the restaurant, I swear. Marco cocked the gun. She's lying. She's probably wearing a wire right now. Step aside, Lorenzo. I'll handle this in the basement. Put the gun away, Marco, Lorenzo said. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't move toward his brother. He just stood there, radiating absolute authority. She brings the Chicago war to our doorstep, Marco yelled. I said. Lorenzo's eyes flashed with a demonic fury. Put the gun away, or I will take the hand that holds it. Marco hesitated. The fear of his older brother outweighed his anger. He lowered the weapon but kept glaring at Bella. She has to go, Marco hissed. Tonight, throw her to the wolves. Lorenzo looked at Bella. She was shaking, tears streaming down her face, waiting for the execution order. She saw the calculation behind his eyes. He was weighing the risk. He was the capo. He had to put the family first. Lorenzo walked over to Bella. He stood between her and Marco. She stays, Lorenzo said firmly. Are you insane? Marco screamed. She stays, Lorenzo repeated. And if the Chicago outfit comes looking for her, let them come. We are the Vitiellos. We don't hand over what is ours. He turned to Bella, gripping her chin, forcing her to look at him. You lied to me, he whispered, his voice laced with disappointment and a dark promise. You brought danger into my house. Now you owe me everything. Your debt to Chicago is gone, Beatrice. Because now, your debt is to me. He turned to Marco. Get out, and if you touch her, Marco, I will forget we are blood. Marco stormed out, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. Lorenzo didn't let go of Bella's chin. Go to your room. Lock the door. Tomorrow, we discuss the terms of your imprisonment. Bella fled the room, her heart shattered. She was alive, but the dynamic had changed. She wasn't just an employee anymore. She was a possession. And the man who had almost kissed her moments ago was now her warden. But as she ran up the grand staircase, she didn't realize that Lorenzo was still standing in the library, looking at the photo of her. He wasn't angry about the danger. He was angry because he knew that to keep her he would have to start a war. And God help him, he was ready to burn Chicago to the ground to keep her in his house. 3 days had passed since the revelation in the library. The atmosphere in the Vitiello estate had shifted from a sanctuary to a fortress preparing for a siege. Bella, now known to the household as Beatrice Gallo, the daughter of a marked man, was no longer allowed in the gardens. Her world had shrunk to the East Wing and Donna Paola's quarters. The windows were fitted with steel shutters. The guards, previously discreet, now patrolled the hallways with assault rifles openly displayed. Lorenzo had become a ghost. He didn't come to her room. He didn't join them for dinner. He was running a war room from his study, fielding calls from associates in Chicago, trying to buy Bella's life with territory and money. But the Chicago outfit, led by the ruthless boss known as the Butcher, didn't want money. They wanted blood to set an example. No one steals from the outfit and lives. On Thursday morning, the situation reached a breaking point. Donna Paola woke up screaming. It wasn't the dementia this time. It was physical pain. She clutched her chest, her face turning an alarming shade of gray. The estate's private doctor, a nervous man named Dr. Eris, examined her and turned pale. It's a blockage, Dr. Eris whispered to Lorenzo in the hallway, though Bella was close enough to hear. She needs the cath lab at St. Francis Hospital immediately. If we don't move her, her heart will stop within the hour. Lorenzo looked at his mother, then at the security monitors. Moving the matriarch was a logistical nightmare even in peace times. Now, with Chicago hitmen potentially watching the gates, it was a suicide mission. Prepare the convoy, Lorenzo ordered, his face a mask of stone. 3 decoy cars. We take the armored SUV, he turned to Bella. You stay here. No, Bella said, her voice shaking but firm. She stepped out of the shadows. She won't let the nurses touch her. She's terrified, Lorenzo. If she panics, her heart rate spikes. You need me to keep her calm. You need me to speak the dialect. It's too dangerous, Lorenzo snapped, checking the magazine of his Glock. They might be waiting. Then let them come, Bella said. I'm the reason they are here, right? If I stay, I'm a coward. If I go, at least I'm doing the job you paid me for. Lorenzo stared at her for a long, agonizing second. He saw the fire in her eyes, the same fire that had made her survive 2 years on the run. He nodded once. Put on a vest, he commanded. Lank. The convoy was a snake of black steel speeding down the Long Island Expressway. Rain lashed against the bulletproof glass. Bella sat in the back of the middle SUV, holding Donna Paola's hand. She whispered stories of the harvest festivals in Sicily, keeping the old woman's eyes focused on her, away from the terrifying speed of the car. Lorenzo sat opposite them, his body angled toward the window, watching the traffic. Marco was in the front passenger seat, an MP5 submachine gun, resting on his lap. The tension was thick enough to choke on. We're coming up on the exit 39 overpass, the driver said into his earpiece. Clear so far. Stay in the middle lane, Lorenzo ordered. Then, the world exploded. A sanitation truck merging from the right didn't slow down. It swerved violently, slamming into the lead decoy car, sending it spinning into the concrete divider. Ambush! Marco screamed. Tires screeched. The convoy slammed on the brakes. From the overpass above, 2 black vans stopped, and men in balaclavas rappelled down the embankment, opening fire before their boots even hit the asphalt. Rat-ta-ta-ta-ta! Bullets hammered the side of their SUV, spiderwebbing the reinforced glass. Donna Paola shrieked, a sound of pure terror. Get down! Lorenzo roared. He threw himself over Bella and his mother, shielding them with his own body, as the glass finally gave way under the sustained fire. Drive! Get us out of the kill box! Marco yelled, firing back through the shattered window. The driver floored the gas, ramming the back of the sanitation truck to push it aside. Metal shrieked against metal. The SUV lurched free, fishtailing on the wet road. A motorcycle pulled up alongside them, a gunman on the back aiming a sawed-off shotgun directly at the rear window, where Bella's head had been seconds ago. Lorenzo didn't hesitate. He pulled his handgun, cracked the door open slightly while they were moving at 60 miles per hour, and fired 2 precision shots. The motorcyclist jerked back, the bike wobbling before crashing into the guardrail in a shower of sparks. Is everyone hit? Lorenzo barked, pulling himself back in. I'm okay, Bella gasped, checking Donna Paula. She's fainted, but she's breathing. Lorenzo grabbed Bella's face, his hands rough, checking her for blood. His eyes were wild, frantic. Did they touch you? Beatrice, look at me. I'm fine, she cried. Lorenzo, you're bleeding. A shard of glass had sliced his cheek, blood running down his jaw onto his white collar. He didn't even feel it. He looked at her with an intensity that terrified and thrilled her. In the chaos of the gunfire, the barrier between boss and maid had vanished. They will pay for this, Lorenzo growled, wiping the blood away. They touched my family. Today, Chicago dies. They sped toward the hospital, leaving the burning wreckage of the ambush behind them. But Bella knew, as she looked at Marco's suspicious glare in the rearview mirror, that the war had only just begun. The hospital wing was on total lockdown. The Vitiello men had requisitioned the entire cardiac floor. Doctors worked under the watchful eyes of armed guards. Donna Paola was stable. The stent procedure was successful, but she was sedated. Bella sat in the waiting room, still wearing the Kevlar vest over her dress, her hands stained with the blood from Lorenzo's cheek. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by a cold dread. The ambush had been too precise. They knew the route, they knew the timing. They knew exactly which car Lorenzo was in. Lorenzo stormed into the waiting room. He had stitched his own cheek, refusing a doctor, leaving a jagged black thread against his skin. He looked like a fallen angel, beautiful and terrifying. He kicked a plastic chair across the room. It shattered against the wall. How? He roared. How did they know? Marco stood in the corner, cleaning his gun. I told you, Lorenzo. She has a tracker on her. Or she signaled them. I didn't. Bella stood up. I've been in the house for 3 days. I don't have a phone. How could I tell them? You're a gallo, Marco spat. Deception is in your DNA. Enough. Lorenzo silenced the room. He walked over to the window, looking out at the parking lot filled with his soldiers. It wasn't her. The decision to go to St. Francis was made 10 minutes before we left. Only the people in the room knew. He turned slowly, his eyes scanning the faces of his inner circle. Marco Bella, Dr. Eris, and Salvatore? Uncle Sal D'Amico, the family consigliere. Sal was an older man, in his 60s, with silver hair and a grandfatherly demeanor. He had served Lorenzo's father. He was the one who had arranged the funeral when the old Don died. He was currently sipping a coffee, looking shaken. It must be a bug in the house, Lorenzo, Sal suggested, his voice raspy. We need to sweep the estate. Lorenzo looked at Sal. He tilted his head, a predator scenting weakness. Sal, Lorenzo said softly, where is your phone? My phone? Sal blinked. It's in my pocket. Give it to me. Sal hesitated. A micro-expression of panic flitted across his face. So fast that only someone who grew up studying faces for survival, like Bella, would notice. Lorenzo, this is insulting, Sal said, forcing a chuckle. I changed your diapers. And Judas kissed Jesus, Lorenzo said. The phone. Now. Marco stepped forward, sensing the shift. He snatched the phone from Sal's pocket before the older man could react. Marco unlocked it. He knew the passcode. They all shared passcodes for security. Marco scrolled. He froze. His face went pale. No way, Marco whispered. Read it, Lorenzo commanded. Marco looked up, betrayal warring with disbelief. A text sent at 9:45 a.m. The bird is moving. St. Francis. Blue SUV. Sent to a number with a 312 area code. Chicago. The room went dead silent. Sal's knees buckled. Lorenzo. Listen. The gallows. They offered me a way out. They said you were weak. They said you were going to ruin the family over a waitress. I did it to save the Vitiello empire. You sold my mother to a firing squad to save the empire? Lorenzo asked. His voice was devoid of emotion, which was far worse than shouting. I didn't think they'd hit the car, Sal pleaded, backing away. They promised they would just grab the girl at the hospital. They lied to me. Lorenzo walked toward Sal. He didn't pull a gun. He didn't raise a fist. He placed his hands on Sal's shoulders, like a nephew greeting a favorite uncle. You broke the code, Sal. Omerta isn't just about silence. It's about loyalty. Lorenzo leaned in and kissed Sal on the forehead. The kiss of death. Take him, Lorenzo said to the guards. Take him to the marshes. I don't want his body found. As Sal was dragged away, screaming and begging for mercy, Bella turned away, sick to her stomach. She felt a hand on her arm. It was Marco. For the first time, Marco didn't look at her with hate. He looked at her with a grim respect. You held your own in the car, Marco grunted. You didn't scream, you covered Mama. I love her, Bella whispered. Yeah. Marco nodded. Maybe you do. Lorenzo approached them. The exhaustion was finally hitting him. He looked at Bella, seeing the trauma in her eyes. We can't go back to the estate, Lorenzo said. It's compromised. We have to go to the safe house in the Hamptons. Just us. No guards. No staff. I can't trust anyone else. What about your mother? Bella asked. Marco stays here with her. He will guard her with his life. Lorenzo looked at his brother. Won't you? She won't get a scratch, Marco promised. Go, take the girl. Disappear until I clean up the mess in New York. Lorenzo took Bella's hand. Come, Isabella. The night isn't over. They left the hospital through the service exit, taking a nondescript sedan. Lorenzo drove. They drove in silence for an hour, reaching a secluded modernist glass house on the edge of a cliff in Montauk. The ocean roared below them, angry and dark. Inside, Lorenzo didn't turn on the lights. He locked the door and turned to Bella. The adrenaline, the fear, the blood, the betrayal, it all culminated in this moment of isolation. You should have run, Lorenzo said, his voice rough. When you had the chance in the city, you should have run from me. I couldn't, Bella admitted, stepping closer to him in the dark room. Why? Because. Bella reached up, her fingers grazing the stitches on his cheek. You looked at me. No one has ever looked at me the way you do, like I matter. Lorenzo let out a ragged breath. He caught her wrist. You matter too much. That is the problem. A king cannot have a weakness. And you, Beatrice, you are the biggest weakness I have ever known. Then let me go, she challenged him breathlessly. Never, Lorenzo growled. He pulled her to him, his mouth crashing onto hers. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was desperate, possessive, acclaiming. It tasted of whiskey and danger. Bella wrapped her arms around his neck, pulling him closer, surrendering to the darkness of the world he had dragged her into. For tonight, there were no hitmen, no Chicago outfit, no traitors. Just the Italian boss and the waitress who had stolen his heart, trying to burn down the world together. But outside, in the rain, a shadow moved across the lawn. The Chicago outfit hadn't given up, and this time, they weren't sending mercenaries. The butcher himself had come to collect. The kiss was a seal, a binding contract written in breath and desperation. But before the warmth of Lorenzo's embrace could truly settle into Bella's bones, the hair on his arm stood up. He pulled back, his hand instantly covering her mouth. The storm outside was raging, wind howling against the glass cliffs of the Montauk house, but Lorenzo was listening to something else. The rhythmic thump-thump of the rain against the roof had changed. It was heavier. Footsteps. "They're here," Lorenzo whispered, his voice barely audible. He didn't look panicked. He looked resigned, like a reaper preparing for the harvest. He reached into the waistband of his trousers and pulled out a spare magazine, checking his weapon. "Go to the bathroom," he commanded, pointing to the sleek tiled room behind the master suite. "Lock the door. Do not come out unless you hear my voice." "Lorenzo! Go!" he hissed. Bella ran. She locked the heavy oak door and slid to the floor, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. But she didn't just sit there. She looked around. A heavy marble soap dispenser. A razor. She grabbed what she could. She was done being the victim. In the living room, the lights flickered and died. The power had been cut. The glass wall facing the ocean shattered inward. The wind roared into the house, bringing with it the smell of ozone and wet earth. A figure stepped through the broken shards. He was massive, a mountain of muscle in a trench coat, holding a silenced pistol. Frank the Butcher Moretti, the enforcer of the Chicago outfit, the man who had haunted Bella's nightmares for 2 years. "Lorenzo Vitiello." The butcher's voice was gravel grinding on concrete. "You made this hard. You could have just mailed us her head." Lorenzo stepped out of the shadows of the kitchen island. He held his gun casually at his side. "And miss the pleasure of killing you myself, Frank? You're a long way from the slaughterhouse." "The girl is mine. The debt is unpaid. The debt is canceled," Lorenzo said calmly. "She is Vitiello now." Frank laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "Then you die with her." Frank raised his weapon. Lorenzo moved. Gunshots popped. Muted foot sounds from the silencers, flashing like strobe lights in the dark room. Lorenzo took a hit to the shoulder, spinning him around, but he fired back, hitting Frank in the thigh. Frank didn't even flinch. He was high on adrenaline, and perhaps something stronger. He charged, tackling Lorenzo into the glass coffee table. The table shattered. The two men rolled amidst the debris, a tangle of limbs and fury. The guns skittered away across the floor. This was no longer a shootout. It was a brawl. Frank was stronger. He pinned Lorenzo down, his hands, the size of hams, wrapping around Lorenzo's throat. Lorenzo, weakened by the car crash and the gunshot, struggled to break the hold. His vision began to spot with black. "Say hello to your daddy," Frank grunted, squeezing the life out of the Prince of New York. The bathroom door slammed open. Frank didn't look. He assumed the girl would be cowering. Bella didn't cower. She ran barefoot across the glass-strewn floor, holding the heavy marble soap dispenser with both hands. She screamed, a primal sound of rage that had been building for 2 years. Crack! She brought the marble down on the back of Frank's head with every ounce of strength she possessed. Frank roared, his grip loosening just enough. He swung a backhand blindly, catching Bella in the ribs and sending her flying into the wall. She crumbled, gasping for air. But the distraction was enough. Lorenzo surged up. He didn't go for a weapon. He went for the throat. He used the jagged shard of the coffee table glass lying next to him. "You touch her," Lorenzo snarled, driving the glass down. "You touch death." It was over in seconds. The butcher lay still. Lorenzo didn't check the body. He scrambled across the floor to Bella. He scooped her up, ignoring the blood pouring from his own shoulder. "Beatrice?" he choked out, rocking her. "Beatrice, look at me." She coughed, clutching her side, but her eyes opened. She looked at the carnage, then up at him. She reached up, her hand trembling, and touched his face. "Is it over?" she whispered. Lorenzo kissed her forehead, his tears mixing with the rain blowing in from the broken window. It is finished. The debt is paid. The sun over Sicily was different than the sun in New York. It was heavier, golden, smelling of dry earth and lemon zest. In the hills outside the town of Prizzi, the Vitiello ancestral villa was alive with music. Long tables were set up in the vineyard, covered in white linen and overflowing with caponata, fresh bread, and wine from the family's own cellar. Donna Paola sat at the head of the table. She looked frail, yes, but her eyes were bright. She was laughing, holding court with a group of elderly locals, speaking rapidly in the thick dialect of the hills. She wasn't speaking to the air anymore. She was speaking to her daughter-in-law. Bella, now officially Isabella Vitiello, poured wine for the guests. She wore a simple white sundress, her hair loose in the Mediterranean breeze. She looked at ease, the shadows of Chicago erased by the Sicilian light. Lorenzo stood on the balcony overlooking the party. His shoulder still ached when it rained, a permanent reminder of the night he almost lost everything. Marco stood beside him, holding a glass of wine. She runs this house better than you do, Marco joked, nodding toward Bella. She runs me better than I run myself, Lorenzo admitted, a rare smile touching his lips. Lorenzo walked down the stone steps, approaching the table. The music stopped as the dawn approached, but he waved it back on. He walked behind Bella and placed a hand on the small of her back. She turned and smiled up at him. It was the smile that had saved him. Donna Paola grabbed Bella's hand and then Lorenzo's, linking them together on the table. Questa è la mia gioia, the old woman said in dialect. This is my joy. Lorenzo looked at his wife. He remembered the terrified waitress in the rain-slicked alley of New York. He remembered the woman who wielded a piece of marble to save his life. You know, Lorenzo whispered in her ear, Mama still thinks you're from Prizzi. Bella laughed, leaning into him. Let her think it. My history doesn't matter anymore, Enzo. No, Lorenzo agreed, kissing the top of her head as the sun began to set over the valley of their ancestors. Only our future. He had been the boss who heard a waitress speak to his mother, intending to buy a moment of peace. Instead, he had bought a lifetime of war and peace, and it was the best deal the Vitiello family had ever made. And that is how a few words in a forgotten dialect toppled a criminal empire and built a new one founded on love. Lorenzo Vitiello thought he was hiring a companion for his mother, but he ended up finding the only woman brave enough to fight for his soul. From the rain-soaked streets of New York to the golden hills of Sicily, they proved that loyalty isn't just about blood. It's about who you bleed for. I hope you enjoyed this journey into the world of the Vitiello family. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, please hit that like button. It helps the channel immensely. Don't forget to share this video with someone who loves a dark romance with a happy ending. And if you haven't already, subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss the next chapter. Tell me in the comments, do you think Marco deserves his own love story next? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.